Welcome back to the I Am More Than podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Wessel. I'm a former Miss Arizona USA professional model and founder of More Than Inc. I am so excited about this week's guest because she has been one of my greatest role models and is hands down the most generous and incredible woman I've ever met in this industry. She's one of the most well-known models of our generation, and she's been featured 4 times in Sports Illustrated Swimsuit. This year, she launched her clothing line, Allworthy, with QVC and developed the most size-inclusive line they've ever had. In this episode, we have a candid conversation all about her experience in the modeling industry, size inclusivity, normalizing everything, mental health, becoming an entrepreneur, and confidence. She's here to prove that we are all more than worthy, and it is my pleasure to introduce you to my dear friend, Hunter McGrady. Hunter has been generous enough to team up with us to give away a $100 gift card to shop her clothing line, Allworthy, on QVC. Check out our Instagram for more details. Now let's dive into the episode. Welcome to the I Am More Than podcast, Hunter. This has been a long time coming, and I'm so excited that you're here.
Oh my gosh, I am so excited to be on with you. I've been biting at the bit to get on here and chat with you. And thank you for having me on.
Oh, of course. I'm so excited to have you on. And before we totally dive into the interview, I want to give a little backstory to some of our listeners because I feel like this story totally encompasses who Hunter is. Because I vividly remember when we met about 3.5 years ago, I think. And for all of you that know Hunter, you're a very accomplished model. You have been a role model to me in this industry. And I remember being in a casting. And normally castings are like silently catty. Nobody really talks. It can be very uncomfortable.
Right.
And I was standing behind you and I was like, oh my God, that's Hunter McGrady. Like, do I talk now? What do I do? And we sparked up conversation somehow. And you were the most down-to-earth, wonderful, incredible person to just have a conversation with. And I remember leaving that casting and really realizing like that's the kind of impact I want to leave on people because you had no idea who I was. You had no idea that I'm like this fangirl over here in the corner, and you were just so gracious. And obviously we've developed a friendship since then. And now I know that it's not just Hunter the model. That's just who you are as a person. Like you're such a light and such a role model to women in the industry and outside.
Wow. Thank you so much. That's quite the intro. Thank you. That is like the kindest thing, ever. You're so easy to get along with. And when you just click right away and you just know your people, I was like, okay, yeah, this girl gets it. She's so my people. And I'm so glad that we've developed a friendship and a lifelong one at that. And thank you for saying that.
Oh, of course. You're so amazing. And I think there's so many aspects of this conversation I want to dive into because I feel like I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours. But I think we should start by you just talking about kind of the beginning days of your modeling career.
Yeah, so I started modeling when I was 16 years old. I grew up in the industry. I was born and raised in Los Angeles. My dad is an actor. My mom was a model. My grandmother was a model. My aunt was a model. So I was kind of always not thrown into all of this, but entrenched in all of this. And I always wanted to be a part of it. I kind of felt like I came alive on camera. I was a very shy kid. I was a shy teenager. I'm still quite introverted. But I felt like I came alive when the camera was on. So at 16, I decided to kind of give it a go. When I started out, I was about a size 2 and I'm 6 feet tall. And, I kind of did my rounds to the agents and, everyone for a couple years that I did that, every agent said, you're great, but, you have to lose weight and you have to, get rid of your acne, you have to take your braces off, X, Y, Z. So, all these different limitations, it was always your great butt. And, so after a few of those, I kind of had to pivot and really figure out what I wanted to do essentially, because I was getting really beaten down, just mentally. And I was beating myself down physically because I was trying so hard to lose these few inches that everyone and their mother kept telling me to lose. If you just did this, then we could sign you. Then you could work as a model. And it was just really unattainable. And I really fell into a huge depression and had severe anxiety. And I thought, gosh, well, if this is what modeling is going to be, I want nothing to do with it, even though it was my dream and my passion. Um, and so then I took a few years off after that because I had to then work on myself, and I know we've had these conversations in the past where just the way this business is, the way society is so it is so one way, and very narrow minded. And so it's been definitely a journey. I took quite a few years off, worked on my mental health, worked on my physical health, and then at 19 became a plus size model.
I love it.
I know.
And I love that you talk about taking that time off too. And I think that's probably why we relate so much to each other, because I think it's so important to not push yourself past that point when you know that your mental, emotional, and physical health is suffering. And I think so many models do that. And that's why they burn out. That's why they don't have successful careers. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think with anybody, honestly, like a model or an actor or a musician or anyone even 9 to 5, I mean, literally anybody in any job, I think it's so important to create boundaries and to say, listen, like this is where I kind of hang up my coat and say enough is enough, because otherwise you really do get burnt out and you start to lose yourself, and I think that was the biggest thing. My biggest takeaway from those years that I took off was boundaries, learning what that looks like.
And that's, like you said, you can relate that to any aspect of anybody's life, because we all need to know where those boundaries lie so that we can be the best versions of ourselves. But if we keep pushing past that point, that's when you get into a dangerous zone with your mental health, with anxiety, with depression. And I know that now, being in the industry as a plus size model, you still have to keep your mental health in check just because you're dealing with the opinions of other people all the time. How do you make sure that you're in a good headspace?
It's funny because I'm not always in the good headspace. And that's one thing I'm very vocal about, is that, like, it's okay to have days that you really don't feel so great and you kind of do feel a little anxious or some depression creeping in. And I definitely have those days. However, I know now that those days don't define who I am. They don't define my worth, and it doesn't hold my value. I'm such a firm believer in taking time for yourself, even if it's 5 minutes. I know it sounds so silly and so small, but even 5 minutes to yourself of just appreciating yourself, appreciating your body, and finding like just these moments through the day to just thank yourself, even on the bad days, because still, even on the bad days, your heart is beating, you're breathing, your legs are taking you places, or, you're doing so many different things. And I think that that's so beautiful and it has to be appreciated. So, really honoring, myself, my body, my mental state, wherever it is, I think is really crucial, and, staying in line and where you kind of need to be.
Oh, yeah. So then take me back to when you decide to put yourself back into the modeling industry. Where is your headspace at that time? Did you have a thicker layer of confidence that you were ready to embrace the body that you were born to have?
So when I first got into plus modeling, I mean, to be quite honest with you, I had just come from, just a few couple years prior of, being a straight size model. And so I had always been kind of brainwashed by society to believe that, plus size models equaled lazy, or plus size equaled XYZ. So I was almost at the beginning of my career, like almost ashamed to even say plus size model, because I myself had been so brainwashed by society to believe that that was one that meant something bad. And so it took a while for me to really embrace it. And and that's just me being completely honest. I was one of those people that, kind of had the tabloids and the magazines and the ads controlling what I thought. And, throughout my career as it started, I really started meeting some incredible people. I started seeing what I was capable of doing, I started really learning to appreciate my body. I started really learning to, appreciate the things that came with it. First, it was stretch marks, which was like very new to me at that time, but I was growing. So it all made sense and added up. But I was like, huh, okay, cool. But I felt more like a woman more than ever. And it just gradually kind of happened for me where I was like, wow, I really feel good and I feel right here. And then I started really being proud of the fact, like, I was like, yeah, I'm plus size and this is freaking awesome.
Mm-hmm.
This is who I am and this is who I'm going to be. And I'm going to shout it from the rooftops. And then as I, progressed again in my career, I kind of started seeing the mistreatment that not only the models, but just women in general who are larger, what was going on. And I thought, God, this is real BS. And I really hate this. And as my platform grew, I kind of wanted to be loud about that because I was like, why are we not all being treated equal? Like, why is our size such a thing? And I kind of had to like go back into my box of my life box and say, well, you know why, Hunter, because you also thought the same way at one point because of the way society is. And that's kind of how, I got this fire lit under me to change the way or help be a change for the way that society looks at people.
Yeah, and you've been a trailblazer at that.
Yeah,
And I love how vocal you are because I think that you have to go through some pretty tough experiences to learn how powerful your voice is. Because
totally.
speaking out about something that is wrong is something a lot of people want to do, but it takes a very courageous person to be able to be one of the forefront people that is doing that. And as long as I've known you, you haven't been afraid to not only speak out about diversity and inclusion and sizing, but also just mistreatment of people.
Yeah.
You're not afraid to speak up. And is that something that has been ingrained in you always? Or do you think that that's because you've just seen how many people have been mistreated for various reasons?
I think it's because I have seen people being mistreated, and that always irked me because like I said, I was always very shy. I mean, I literally ate in my Spanish teacher's homeroom all through freshman year, and then I was homeschooled the rest of it because I was just so shy. It was just like unbearable to even like talk to people really. So I really like learned, it was like a fast track learning about myself just in my like late teens, early 20s. And, it was along the way and no one was really saying anything. And I was like, huh, okay, so is this just what it's going to be? Because this doesn't just affect me, but it affects my peers and it affects the next generation. If I have daughters, if I'm like blessed enough to have daughters one day, like it's going to affect them, and so you have to get uncomfortable. Change doesn't happen in the comfort. And so you kind of have to just bite the bullet and say, okay, it's go time. And I think, you look at Ashley Graham, who was like, has been the pioneer for so many women. And that was another thing. I was like, okay, I love that. I love seeing that. And then I was seeing more and more plus size women kind of speaking out or being showcased. One of the many was the Vogue Italia cover with Candace Huffine, Tara Lynn, and Robin Lawley, which like shook me to my core. It was the most amazing cover I've ever seen. And it was just like, I just kept seeing these things that were confirming to me that like this is what I was meant to be and do, and that it was okay to be loud.
Totally. And representation matters so much. And I think
Mm-hmm.
we can all agree with that statement, but for so long we just didn't have it. So we thought that if we didn't look the same as the other people that were represented, then we weren't good enough. So I think knowing that we're seeing so much diversity and inclusion now, which we still have a long ways to go, but do you think that speaking up and being so vocal with your platform propelled your modeling career, or do you think it hurt you in any way?
I think it definitely propelled it. I think that, when I first got Sports Illustrated, that's when my platform really started growing. That was in 2000 and I shot in 2016. It came out in 2017 and at the beginning of the year. And I mean, my social media platform like really grew overnight. Like it was just absolutely overwhelming and insane. And news media outlets were picking it up. And it was just like, it was kind of like I felt like someone was like, I was on a racetrack and they were like, okay, ready and go. And it was like, okay, let's do this, and I thought, this is my chance. These are the doors and the car, that are opening, the cars that were laid out for me. So let's hit it out of the park. So, I really tried on any news outlet to vocalize what was important to me, that I wasn't just a pretty face. I'm not just someone who takes beautiful photos. Like, I'm so much more than that. That is just like the very like base what I am is taking photos. Like, I am way beyond that. And so I think that people started noticing that, and I think that they, I guess, liked that. I don't really know, because there's also a ton of people who don't like it. And there's a lot of like haters as well. You can never be perfect for everybody. Someone always has to say something. So I kind of just take it day by day, and I hope that I'm making an impact of some sort.
Well, girl, you are. That's for sure. You're making a huge impact. And I think that's amazing that you've been able to make such an impact in really a short amount of time. And I want you to take me back to when you found out you're shooting for Sports Illustrated Swim, because you got back into the modeling industry when you were what, 19 or 20, you said?
Yes. So I was 19 when I like very first started plus size modeling. I'm 27 now. I got, let's see. Wow. Okay. Bad with math. So I got,
I'm with you.
I got Sports Illustrated when I was 23.
Wow.
Or I had just turned 23. And so yeah, I had only really been in it for a couple few years, and I just remember I had shot for this magazine called Treats Magazine, and I had shot with a photographer named Ben Watts, who like shoots Sports Illustrated, Victoria's Secret, Athleta, like he does everything. And I was I shot with Ben Watts for a Melissa McCarthy's line. And then I shot with James McCarry, who also shoots everything for Treats. And that was, both of them had said, hey, listen, like, you should meet with the editor for Sports Illustrated Swimsuit, MJ Day. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, she's not going to, like, what? And I told my agents, I said, yes, these photographers who work with Sports Illustrated said I should meet with them. And their first reaction was kind of like, well, yeah, I mean, that's like the end goal, right? Like, we'll get there. And I was like, what do you mean? I was like, that's like what I see for myself, like this year. I've always had very high goals like set for myself. And I was like, well, why wouldn't that happen now?
Yeah.
I was never thinking that's the end goal. This is the now goal. So, and they ended up calling me, to come into the office, and I ran down there. I was in the worst outfit imaginable. I was in like sneakers, leggings, a sweatshirt, and my hair up because I was coming from an interview, like mortifying. And they asked me to be a part of it. And it was just like, I was like on the floor. I mean, I was just insane when my agents called and confirmed of where I was flying to. And I was just like, wow, it felt very surreal.
Oh, girl, and you've now shot for them, what, 4 times?
Yes, I know.
Wow.
The 4th issue that I've been in just came out last month or 2 months ago. And every time it's like a pinch me moment.
Get it, girl. Do you ever surprise yourself by how far you've come in such a short amount of time?
I do. And then at the same time, I'm also like my hardest critic. And I'm always like, okay, we got to do more. We got to do more. Like on to the next, And I think that like, I definitely need to sometimes just step back and be like, wow, I have come a long way. One of my favorite speakers, Joyce Meyer, she always says, you may not be where you are, but you sure as hell are not where you used to be. And I think
love it.
that's such a great, thing, is like, we should always be striving for better, but also just appreciating, where we are in the moment.
Absolutely. And you had talked about just how many followers really you had gained through being on Sports Illustrated Swim and seeing your career take off. And you had mentioned you can't please everybody, which I think when we had first started talking, I remember asking you, I'm like, how do you deal with all this criticism? Because I've gotten a small amount and like, I don't know whether to like yell back, ignore it. Like, I don't know how to brush this off. And I just remember you saying, you know what, pray for him. And I was like,
Mhm.
girl,
Mhm.
I need more of you because I don't know how to just pray and shut my mouth. So I'm curious, how did you come to that sense of confidence that you didn't feel like you needed to constantly fire back at people that were firing at you?
So I grew up, my family was in the business. And one thing they kind of prepped me before doing anything and going into this, they said, listen, the bullies you get in high school, that doesn't stop in high school. That continues. And just know that you can't please everybody. And anybody who has something mean to say is hurting, and hurting people hurt people. And pray for them because there's something going on, that they have this hate in their heart that needs help, that needs healing. So pray for them. And it's really hard, girl, to like humble yourself and just say, you know what? I'm going to put you on my prayer list and thinking of you because, of course, my first reaction is to go back and be combative and try to prove my point, which I'm not going to lie, I've done that times as well because I just catch myself. But for the most part, I just kind of keep it neutral and just say, listen, like, you're being silly. And I'll pray for you because it's really a reflection on them and not on you.
And I think women need to hear that over and over and over again because it's so true. I mean, like you said, hurting people hurt people. And I think now, just with the way our world is right now and with everything happening and what's about to be happening in the next couple months, I think it's a lot easier to attack or point out things that you don't like about somebody else instead of just kind of being a blessing or staying silent or just being kind, even if you don't agree with somebody. So I think that that's a really important lesson to take really into every aspect of your life.
Totally.
And I had gone out for the Sports Illustrated Swim open casting call a couple of years ago. And I remember you giving me all of this advice, and you were basically on my speed dial as I was like, girl, what do I do here? What do I do here? Like, how this happened, how should I handle it? And the cool part that reminded me again just how amazing you are is because there was never any competition. You don't view these other women as if they're taking something away from you. And I think that's something that makes you so rare and so it's going to make your career so successful because you're not worried about kind of sharing the wealth. And has that been something that just comes so naturally to you?
Well, I I never really understood. Like my mom, when I was really young, she always said, nothing feels worse than jealousy. Like that feeling is terrible. And that always stuck with me because it is. And the thing is like we have to, it's okay to sit at the table and be at the table and be the star at the table, but then you have to start inviting people in. And then at some point you move to another table and they take over that table. Like, you have to, it can't just be one person. Otherwise change doesn't happen. Then you're just a novelty, right? Like, and I think that was the biggest thing that I realized was that, you know, women already, we have so much stacked against us as it is in society. So the fact so many are pinning one against each other is just so crazy and chaotic to me. Listen, like it's so much, takes so much less energy to just be kind, lift each other up, support one another and champion one another than it is to do the opposite of being nasty and trying to get to the finish line first. It's like, just because someone is shining doesn't mean that you're also not shining. This one guy I went to high school with posted this one time on Facebook, and I was like, oh my God, he totally is right in saying this. He was like, flowers are so beautiful, but so are Christmas lights, and they're completely different, but you love them both, right? Like, why can't we apply that every single day to the way that we treat other women? Like, why is there so much competition when we're both able to shine?
Wise words right there. I like that comparison.
Right? I
That's
know.
funny.
Okay, Nick Remy from high school. You
Oh
get
my gosh,
it.
shout out. He totally gets it. And it's so true. I mean, we need to be on each other's side and be cheering each other on because someone else's success doesn't take anything away from you. And
Right.
I think that's something that, again, is not just for the industry. that's for every single occupation, no matter what you're doing. And like you said, jealousy is a horrible feeling. And it's
Yeah.
something that a lot of people are struggling with. Again, just bringing it back to quarantine where we're at right now, I think that comparison culture is at an all-time high. And I'm noticing that a lot of people's self-confidence is taking a big plunge, and there's a lot of reasons for that. But how do you make sure that you're not just encouraging other people to build up their self-confidence, but also feel good just in your own skin when you're in quarantine like the rest of us?
I think that it's so, first of all, comparison, I think, is the thief of joy. And it is really prevalent right now with social media because we are all in quarantine and we're kind of looking to see what other people are doing. Like, are you going back out in the world? So and so is traveling. How are you doing that? How can you afford that? Like, all these different things. I think it's so important to have a good, either if it's one person or a core group of people that you can just talk to, just kind of like a one-to-one, keep you grounded, kind of keep you sane. For me, that is my sister and my mom. Like, those two are my everything. And if you don't have those people in your life, I do think that there are, ways that social media can be of help, is when, you can go and find people who inspire you, or, who keep that conversation open to kind of go and chat with them, on those days that you're not feeling so great.
Yep, you're so right. And something that I've noticed you doing a lot on social media is normalizing everything. You're not afraid to talk about this stuff that we haven't talked about for so long. And every time you post something, every time I'm like, oh my God, I'm not the only one. Like you were talking about like butt and boob acne. And I'm like, oh my
Yes.
God, we all have this. Like,
Oh my God. It's so funny because it started with the butt acne, because I was like, it was summer, I mean, just a couple months ago, and I was like looking in between my thighs. I was like, oh my God, I have so many pimples in between my thighs, like, and my butt. Ugh, like, whatever. This is so annoying. Like, I'm not even ashamed of it. I'm just like, this is annoying. It hurts. So I like posted it, and then I'm not kidding. I mean, I got probably 10,000 DMs from women being like, wow, I thought I was the only one. And I was like, okay, this needs to be talked about more. And there's so many other things that need to be talked about more. And I just really saw the benefit of opening up those conversations. Like, yesterday I talked about pimple boobs and nipple hair, and all these different things that are very normal for women, but again, society has kind of told us that we have to be this perfect one way, and we only see this 1% photoshopped version of a lot of people on Instagram, so we don't think that they have these things. And I'm like, gosh, some of your favorite models and actresses have DM'd me saying, gosh, I feel the same way, like, little do people know.
yep. Which I love. I think that that's another reason I wanted to even start this podcast, is just so people can hear from the women that they admire
Right.
that the stuff they're struggling with is totally normal. Like, just because you're in a different career field or you're at a different level in your career doesn't mean that that person doesn't struggle with literally the exact same thing that you're struggling with.
Totally. Totally.
And that's been something that's really opened up my eyes a lot, just because I think for so long, for generations, women have kind of suffered in silence, thinking that something's wrong with them or that they can't really talk to other people about it because it's embarrassing. And that's the really cool part about 2020, especially, is I think people are finally getting to the point that they're like, can we talk? Because
Right.
I just need to know that I'm not alone.
Totally. And I think that that's why we're seeing so many. I mean, listen, we're in the middle of a civil rights movement right now, like, because people talk, because people got loud and opened up conversations that may have been uncomfortable. But again, like, that's where the change happens.
Exactly. And it's good to push past your comfort zone. And I think a lot of women have been scared, women and men actually, about saying the wrong thing.
Right.
And we're finally getting to the point that it's like, it's okay to say the wrong thing with the right intention, as long as you're willing to grow and not be closed-minded.
Exactly.
Well, I want to pivot in a little way to talk about your clothing line, because I know that launched while we were in quarantine and I want to know everything about it.
Yes. So I launched my clothing line, All Worthy with QVC, in April. I'm so excited about it. It's still so like surreal and weird to even say like my clothing line because it's something I've dreamt about for so long. It is a size inclusive line. So we have sizes extra, extra small to 5X, 00 to 36, and 3 inseams, petite, regular, and tall inseams. So we've really like broadened the spectrum there at QVC. I'm the first person to bring that kind of size range to QVC. However, they have been, inclusive. Most of their brands have gone up to a 3X, even before I came on. And then I was the first to bring it to a 5X, which I'm so proud of.
That's so amazing. And I'm sure you're hearing from women all over the place, like, thank you for making the exact same cute outfit in every size, because I think a lot of people don't realize how tough it is for women of all sizes really to shop the same cute clothes. Was that an issue you were seeing a lot? And that's why you were like, no, I'm going to make a change and I'm going to be the first to do it.
Yeah. So it's funny because like my best friend, she is maybe about a size like 8. So she can shop, in your regular like brick and mortar stores. And I would always look at what she was wearing and be like, oh my God, that's so cute. I want that. Where did you get it? And she would say the name of the store. And I was like, oh, dang, they don't carry my size. And likewise with her, she'd be like, oh my God, that's so cute. Where is that? And I'd be like, oh, it's from, wherever it was from, except it's just a plus size store. And so it was kind of this back and forth. And I was like, gosh, I think why can't we all just like wear this? Like, if we want to wear that, why can't we wear that? Why is that not available to us? I also think that the plus size woman for so long, hasn't really been taken into account. So like, a lot of times you'll see things that are just really kind of like frumpy and not really fabulous fitting or have some like interesting print on it. And, I just thought we're so much cooler than this. Like, why are we being like put in this box? So I kind of said, hey, I want to design things that fit everybody. And what's cool about the line is that it's designed from a plus size perspective, whereas most lines that even go to extended sizing are designed from a Missy. And for the listeners who don't know, a Missy perspective is basically someone who would, be like a 2, 4, 6, 8, someone that, your everyday like can shop anywhere. So they're usually designed from that perspective and then graded up. Whereas mine is obviously designed from my perspective at a size 18, 20 and then graded down. So, it's been a really fun process. I love the process of design. I've always wanted to do it. And it's just really rewarding, when you make something and then people love it.
No, I'm sure it is. And you've seen it. It's been blowing up all over social media. You see women all over the country wearing your styles. And I'm sure that's super surreal. And you had just mentioned about the fit. And I think that that's so important. And I hope people understand like how valuable it is that it is being graded by your body, because there's so many that just grade off of this mold that even doesn't fit a woman that fits in that standard. Just because you're a 2, 4, 6 woman, you can walk into a store and you could be a 6 one place, a 2 one place, a 10 one place. Yeah. It's not consistent. So I think it's important that you guys are pouring so much time and energy into your fit because that's really going to make you guys stand out.
It is. And I mean, listen, you get it. You do fit modeling. You're the person who basically says, hey, listen, this doesn't work or this works or this is, hitting under my arm too weird, XYZ. Like that's, I think the most important part in any production is the fit of it. And like knowledgeable fit models like yourself, it's like, that is really what makes a garment work. And I just have so much appreciation for our fit models and the people who, really, we work really hard tailoring each piece to ensure that, it works on everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And what has it been like launching a company right now during this craziness of 2020? Has it had some unforeseen challenges that you weren't expecting, or what's it been like?
It's interesting because, of course, this isn't the like I didn't think that we would be launching under this pretense. I didn't think that it would be like this, but I've kind of had to pivot and say, well, I don't think anybody thought that like 2020 would be like this. So take yourself out of it and just be grateful that you have, something to talk about. What's great about QVC though is that they're a home shopping network. So they kind of have this customer wired in. And she's so loyal and so lovely. And, she still wants to shop. I think we all kind of still want to shop. It's something that we really are looking forward to. I know for myself, even if it's like ordering batteries from Amazon, I'm like excited to get that on my doorstep. Right?
Totally. I totally relate
Yeah,
to that.
giddy. So, I think that right now online shopping and home shopping networks, things like that are still, doing okay, which is really, really wonderful. And the truth of the matter is that we are all going to get out of this and we are all going to get back to our normal lives and we are all going to want to feel good and look good. The one thing that is interesting is doing like design meetings and also being live on air from like my closet. I'm
And
like,
you're live at like midnight. I don't
yes,
know how you do it.
I know we do. So it's like crazy because, you do some shows are at like 1 p.m. or like 4 p.m. And then sometimes you have some at midnight, which is 9 p.m. on Pacific Standard Time. So it's just as like, it's such an interesting world, but I love it so much. It's such a rush. So yeah, it's been interesting, but really fun and a cool learning experience.
Oh, I'm sure. And now that you've done it and you've been involved in the process, the design process, and really every single aspect of this company, are you encouraged or frustrated by any of the other brands that you're seeing that they're choosing not to be as inclusive, knowing that they had the abilities to? What are your thoughts on that?
I'm a bit frustrated. I've always been frustrated though, even before I had my own brand. Um, just because I know that there's availability to expand. What it is that a lot of these brands just aren't willing to. Like it's so interesting how some brands can make like an extra oversized blazer or like an extra oversized tunic, but can't but then says, oh, well, doing plus sizes is a lot more fabric. I'm like, well, you're making these oversized garments. What do you mean? Like use that to make plus. And but again, it kind of goes back to like at the root of it, it's like, do you really want to, or are you just saying you're inclusive? Or again, body positivity has now become like a hot button word where people use it essentially to bring in the consumers and because they feel good about it. They feel good if this brand is being body positive, but then you look at the root of it and you're like, okay, well, you only go up to a large, at max an extra large, which is about a size 12. 72% of Americans are a size 16 or above. So you're leaving out a huge majority of women. And why? Right? Like you can budget in a plus size consumer and say, hey, I may not order, this many smalls or extra smalls, and I'll instead put that into, making a larger size. And so, I think that there's definitely a long way to go when it comes to the fashion industry.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think it's interesting because there's kind of two viewpoints on this, is that it's like, wow, look how far we've come. And then there's another viewpoint that's like, yeah, it's about time, but like, look how far we have to go. Like
Right.
it's such slow progression. And we've been at a couple New York Fashion Week shows together, and I know you've walked in a bunch of them. And it's always surprising to me that designers almost want like a pat on the back for being inclusive.
Oh, girl, it's like so wild. Last season I did, and this season, I mean, they're still doing like virtual New York Fashion Week, but last season I did like a full boycott on brands that weren't showcasing plus sizes or carried plus sizes, because a lot of times I found that brands were putting like a size 12 girl in the runway and being like, well, we're inclusive, look, but then they don't carry that size, or they carry the size and they don't put any plus models on the runway. And I'm like, it doesn't add up to me. You're basically saying that like we are not a hot enough commodity to be showcased. And I won't support that. I just don't, I think it's important to support the people that support you.
Yep. Like you're saying, you're leaving out such a large majority of women by not being inclusive. Or, like you had said, the body positivity word now is such a hot word for companies to be using. But I'm also noticing that a lot of people are feeling very protective of that word, that it feels like you're not able to use it unless you fit into a certain standard. And do you think that there's only one type of woman that deserves to say she's body positive, or do you think that is for everybody?
It's for everybody. And that's the thing, is that it's like the thing is the body positive movement did root in a plus size movement, because there was no visibility of plus size women in fashion and film and television, and I mean everywhere across the board. But you look at the root of it and it is for everybody, right? Like, but if you're going to say it, then you have to showcase it. You have to show that it is for everybody. Like, same with inclusivity. You can't be like, we're inclusive, but we only go up to a size extra large. Or even brands who are plus size brands who are like, we're inclusive, but like we start at a size 14. So it's like, look up what inclusive means. Look up what body positivity means. Like, it's about celebrating who we are as we are, our differences and what we have going on. And, I think along the way, it's just really turned into a money making word.
Yeah, I'm noticing that too. And I think a lot of people are noticing that. And that's why it's so frustrating. And I think that's why people are so protective of it, because they have to be for the first time. That it's like for so long, they could kind of stand by that and hope that the brands that were saying they were body positive were following up with it. And I think the fact that you did boycott shows last year is powerful, because you don't just talk about it, you follow up with it with your actions. And I think that that's a direct result of Allworthy, because you've talked about it for so long and now you're like, nope, you know what? You weren't doing it. So here I'm doing it. And here's my entire clothing line that caters to every type of woman.
Right. Totally. I mean, it's hard to sometimes stand up and like, listen, last year I got an offer to sit front row, and one of my dream designers that I would have like literally like fallen on the floor if you would have asked me. But I asked my publicist, I was like, okay, so what's the deal? They obviously have plus models in the show, right? And because they make larger garments, right? Like they dress larger celebrities. And she was like, unfortunately, this show, no. And I was like, all right, well, I'm not going. Like, even though it's a dream of mine, like, there's just certain things where you just have to say, I'm not willing to compromise that. You have to stick to your values and your morals and power through.
You really, really do. And even though that's not always fun sometimes, I think that that's something that sets you apart, just because we're not willing to be fluid on values or morals. It's very set in stone. And I want to also talk about how you maintain just mental health now with everything that's happened with your career. I know you had talked about just having some anxiety and depression prior to really diving into the modeling career. And I know you've had such highs, and I want to know kind of the behind the scenes work that you have to do, the support system that you have that maintains that. Because of course we all have really good days and really bad days, but I think being in the public eye, you have to do a little bit more work to make sure that you're keeping yourself in check. Are there certain resources you use? Do you meditate? What is it for you that kind of helps you stay in that positive headspace?
So at the beginning of quarantine, essentially, I was really noticing I was very anxious, very depressed, very stressed out. So I ended up actually working with a psychiatrist over Zoom, and we switched out my medication because it wasn't serving me anymore, and it wasn't, doing the job that it needed to do. I felt very out of control almost. It just was a very weird time. And that was something that, I think was really healthy for me. And I always encourage people, I say, listen, I also do Zoom therapy. I think that that's very important. It's important to know that like help is out there and these people are certified in this to help you, and nothing you are going to say is a surprise to them. Because I used to be really nervous about going to therapy or talking to a psychiatrist because I thought, oh my God, this means something's wrong with me. And then you're going to get talking more and you're like, oh, she's obviously heard this 100 times over, and then you realize how many people actually struggle with this. And so, at the beginning of this, I changed my medication and I worked with the psychiatrist closely. I mean, every week we were talking and seeing how I was doing. I love online therapy, or Zoom therapy now. I love meditation. I think that is, one thing that I picked up over quarantine. It's not something I've done, for a super long time, but over quarantine, it's been really crucial to kind of like clear my headspace. And I use the Insight Timer app, which is just like, it has been amazing. Also like trying to just get out and like, even if it's just walking around my neighborhood, just like getting fresh air and not feeling so cooped up. I think all of us right now feel very like the walls are closing in.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm
Yeah.
totally projecting that, but, and I think that it's important to get out and to also like be cautious of what news you're following and know that like there are brighter days ahead, and just like, there is a silver lining and we will get there and we will see it.
You're so right. And I love that you brought up therapy because I think that it is one of the best, most underrated resources that everyone has access to right now, especially having it online. And I think it's something that a lot of people, if they haven't done it, are really scared to take that plunge. And that's why I love having people talk about the fact that it has helped them so much, because I think that it's such an incredible resource that really can change your life. Because even though we have in-depth conversations with our families and our friends and our loved ones and your husband, I'm sure it's a different level of that. You get to a deeper level that you can actually start to heal some of the things that may be hurting you that you don't even know is hurting you.
Right. And you kind of get this third eye, this like third party view of it. And you take any like emotion out of it. You take any, anything out of it that might be hindering what you're thinking. And then this person can kind of go, okay, so this is the deal, and the thing is therapy can be very expensive sometimes. And I totally get that. However, there are resources online. I know that like Talkspace is one of them. There's a couple other ones who are much more affordable, but that's just one thing that like I'm willing to invest in. And if you can't do therapy, like for me, I'm always like, listen, sometimes it's just like therapy is all you need. But then I'm also like a huge advocate for medication, because sometimes you need medication. I've been on medication since I was 16 years old. So, I'm always like, don't be ashamed of whatever it is that you need, because help is out there. There are people who specialize in this, and it is very normal to have these things going on. Doesn't mean anything is wrong with you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's such an important message for everybody to hear. And I know probably anxiety and depression is at an all-time high right now, which again is totally normal.
Yep.
We're all dealing with something we've never dealt before. So if you are someone listening and you are struggling, just know every single person is. It may look like we're not if you look on social media, but here's the truth right here. So now, what are some things that you do to make yourself feel confident or boost up your confidence?
I'm such a firm believer in affirmations, and I feel like everybody says this now, but I really am. I'm like, I learned affirmations at 16, again, in therapy. She told me, she said, Hunter, I want you to get out of the shower, slick your hair back, don't wear any makeup, and look at yourself in the mirror naked and tell yourself things that you want to love about yourself, because those things will then soon become things that you do love about yourselves, because that's the way that our mind works. And she said, I want you to do this every day and do it throughout the day. Look at yourself in the mirror and tell yourself what you want to love about yourself. And so I've really learned to rewire my brain, or my mom likes to call it renew your mind. And I think it's really powerful when you realize how important our mind is in our everyday life, and how important, just as it is, important to work out and get out and, get physical, it's just as important, if not more important, to exercise your mental health and to speak kindly and to speak and think positively to yourself, So affirmations is like the biggest takeaway that I've ever gotten from therapy. I've brought it with me 16 years later. Like it's changed my entire life.
I love that. I remember you giving me that advice a couple of years ago when I asked. I'm like, girl, I want your confidence. And you were like, well, do you do affirmations? And I was like, well, sometimes.
Totally. Well, it's hard, there's a box set that I use it's from Love Powered Co. And it's basically like an affirmation guide. It has these cards in it that you look at every day. And like, for instance, like I'm looking at one now, let's see, it says like, because I am me and I love myself unconditionally, perfectly imperfect, flaws and all. I am unique. I am sexy. I am me. And there will never, ever be another me. And so it's basically like hundreds of these cards that you read every day. You can go through them. They're different. This was like something I've been recommending to people, because it's like, if you've never done affirmations, it's kind of like, you kind of feel, am I crazy? Like, what's going on?
Like, what do I say?
Right. You don't really know what to say. So this has been really cool. They sent it to me during quarantine. They were like a small business, and I just found it very, very cool and easy to kind of like intro yourself into that.
I'm ordering that box as soon as we're done here. Need that in my life.
I don't know the girls. I have no affiliation. I was just like, wow, this is really like awesome. I thought it was like genius.
That is genius. And I like that you said you have to be careful about how you're talking to yourself. There's this quote that I love that says, be careful what you say to yourself because you're listening.
Oh,
and
I love that.
Isn't it so good? You have to catch yourself, because even if you're like having an off day and you're like, oh, I am getting acne on my face, so I feel ugly. It's like, no, you can't even have that inner dialogue in your head, or else you're going to continue spiraling. You've got to be able to kind of pick yourself up, and given nobody's perfect at this, I'm sure there's days that you can't really do that. But for the most part, I think that inner dialogue is really key to developing confidence.
There's a scientist who did a study on water where he took basically two things of water and put them in two different rooms and spoke to the water. I'm not kidding you. If any of you guys can find this scientist, but he spoke to the water in two separate rooms. And one, at the end of the experiment, he spoke to one positively, one negatively. The one who he had spoke to positively, I don't know if it was like ions or something was radiating much higher, or electrolytes, whatever it was, than the negative one. And I was like, God, if we can do that to water, like imagine what our minds are doing, that are like constantly every single day. Also, that was just the most terrible like analogy description, but
No, I totally get it. And I love it, because you're so right. Like, I think that it's just so underestimated that we have so much more power over ourselves than we really give ourselves credit for.
Yeah, we really, really do.
For real. Well, like I said at the beginning, I feel like I could talk to you forever, but I really appreciate you coming on. I think you're just such an incredible woman, and I'm so excited for our audience to get to know you better.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for having me on. And I'm just really excited and proud of you for this podcast. I've listened to every episode, and you're wonderful. And I can't wait for the next one.
So there you have it. I hope you got just as much out of this episode as I did. Please make sure you subscribe, rate, and review. It helps us so much. And remember, you are so much more than whatever label has been placed upon you. We'll see you next week.